There is a restlessness within you that no possession, achievement, or fleeting victory can quiet. It is the subtle ache that stirs when the night grows silent, when the noise of the world finally fades, and you are left to sit with yourself. In those moments, a question presses against the edges of your consciousness like a whisper you cannot unhear. Why am I here? Why do I keep returning to this world, this cycle, this ceaseless wheel of life that both nourishes and traps me? For millennia, mystics, philosophers, and seekers have wrestled with this enigma, shaping stories of reincarnation, karma, cosmic tests, and divine games. And yet the riddle remains as fresh and urgent today as it was in the hearts of the ancients. To ask why your soul keeps reincarnating into this matrix is to confront the architecture of existence itself. The matrix here is not merely the digital metaphor popularized in modern myth. It is the tapestry of reality that binds your senses, your beliefs, and your very identity. It is the stage upon which your spirit takes form again and again, stepping into different costumes, playing different roles, yet somehow never breaking character long enough to walk off entirely. The ancients called it samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, and they spoke of it with both reverence and weariness. For to be trapped within it is to wander through a dream both wondrous and suffocating, radiant with beauty, yet threaded with suffering. Your life, as you know it, is not simply an accident of biology or a flickering spark doomed to extinguish without meaning. It is a deliberate immersion, as though your consciousness were plunged into a sea of illusions designed to awaken something deeper through struggle. Imagine it as a labyrinth carved from the very fabric of perception, every twist and turn reflecting the forgotten lessons of lifetimes past. You are both the wanderer and the architect, the prisoner and the key. And yet, like a dreamer forgetting they are dreaming, you mistake the walls for reality and forget the larger journey that drew you here in the first place. This matrix is seductive. It teaches you through desire, through hunger, through longing for things that never satisfy completely. It binds you through fear, through loss, through the sharp sting of impermanence. Every joy you touch carries within it the shadow of its end, and every sorrow eventually softens into wisdom or longing for transcendence. The wheel keeps turning, spinning you from cradle to grave, from grave to cradle, as though you were a flame passed from candle to candle across centuries. And you may wonder, why would the soul endure this? Why would it return again and again to a stage soaked with both glory and grief? The truth is not simple, for the soul does not move in straight lines but in spirals. Reincarnation is not punishment in the strict sense, nor is it a random accident of fate. It is a schooling, a theater, a mirror house of the infinite. Each lifetime reveals facets of the self you could not see before. Perhaps in one existence you are born into wealth and discover its emptiness. In another, you endure hardship and uncover strength hidden within. Sometimes you are given the privilege of power, other times the humility of powerlessness. The matrix, if seen with clear eyes, is not merely a trap. It is a vast curriculum where every experience, whether bitter or sweet, becomes a lesson your soul absorbs. And yet there is a deeper paradox. For many, this cycle is not felt as a gift but as a burden. The yearning for liberation, for freedom from the endless wheel, rises like a distant melody remembered from a forgotten homeland. You may have felt it yourself, the inexplicable sense that this world is not your final home, that you are playing a part in a drama larger than any single lifetime, that there is something beyond the veil of appearances calling you back. This longing is the soul's memory, faint but insistent, reminding you that you are not merely flesh and thought, but something eternal, something that cannot be confined forever by the illusions of time and space. The idea of the matrix, then, serves as a bridge between the mystical and the mundane. On one level, it is the network of social, cultural, and mental constructs that shape your choices and beliefs, keeping you tethered to patterns that feel safe but stagnant. On another level, it is a cosmic machinery, a field of energy and law that weaves together karma, intention, and growth. When you look around and wonder why you are caught in repeating struggles, why certain lessons return in different forms, why certain wounds echo through generations, you are glimpsing the threads of this matrix. To see them is the first step toward understanding why your soul keeps reincarnating within it. But perhaps the most striking realization is this: the Matrix is not your enemy. It is not a cage built by some cruel overseer, though it may feel that way at times. It is more akin to a dream designed to reveal the dreamer. Like a mirror, it reflects back to you what you are not yet ready to accept, magnifying your shadows until you can no longer look away. Every rebirth is another chance to face the reflection, another chance to grow into the fullness of what you truly are. And until that fullness is recognized, the cycle continues, not as punishment, but as invitation. The introduction to this mystery is not meant to solve it, but to draw you deeper into it. For the question of why your soul reincarnates is not one to be answered with logic alone. It is to be felt, wrestled with, contemplated in the quiet hours when your spirit is closest to remembering its origins. To begin this journey is to step into a conversation with eternity itself, to listen for the voice that speaks beneath your thoughts, the one that whispers, "You are more than this body, more than this life, more than the sum of your fears and desires. You are learning, you are remembering, you are awakening." And so, as we set the stage for this exploration, we will move beyond mere speculation and into the heart of the matter. We will trace the patterns of illusion and truth, unravel the symbolic language of the soul, and uncover the ways in which this cosmic cycle reaches into your everyday choices. The question is not only why you return, but what you are meant to see, to transform, and ultimately to transcend. To begin peeling back the layers of why the soul is drawn again and again into this vast matrix of existence, we must first understand the currents that flow beneath the surface of what we call life. If the introduction was the opening of the curtain, here we step into the theater itself, watching how the lights and shadows move in deliberate choreography. These are not abstract principles floating above us, but living realities embedded in the very fabric of our being. They reveal themselves as themes, recurring melodies in the symphony of incarnation, each one carrying both weight and wisdom. At the heart of reincarnation lies the theme of unfinished resonance. Imagine striking a bell that does not stop ringing when your body ceases to breathe. The sound lingers, stretching into realms unseen, carrying the vibrations of every choice, every thought, every unresolved desire. The soul, sensitive to its own echoes, follows them back into form, seeking completion, harmony, release. This is one of the oldest teachings, that karma is not punishment, but momentum, the natural continuation of energy seeking balance. If you loved without courage, you may return to learn boldness. If you harmed out of ignorance, you may return to discover compassion. It is not about debt in the human sense, but about restoring the harmony of a note that longs to resolve. Yet this theme is more intricate than moral arithmetic. The matrix itself is built from patterns, and patterns demand repetition until they are understood. Think of a dream where you find yourself lost in a house with endless corridors, always returning to the same door no matter which way you turn. The soul experiences the matrix in a similar way, caught in cycles until awareness dawns, until recognition transforms the repetition into revelation. To incarnate is to willingly step back into the dream, knowing that the dream holds keys you have not yet grasped. Another theme is the interplay of illusion and awakening. The matrix thrives on appearances, the shimmering veil of matter, the seduction of identity, the drama of separation. Here, the soul wears masks, man, woman, ruler, beggar, child, elder, and each mask feels absolute while worn. Yet beneath them something timeless watches, learning what it means to forget and to remember. This forgetting is not an accident. It is the crucible of growth. If you arrived fully awake, carrying every memory of your eternal self, the challenges of this realm would dissolve before they had a chance to teach. The veil is the teacher's cloak, concealing truth until the seeker has ripened enough to unveil it. Power and powerlessness also weave themselves through the core concepts of reincarnation. Across lifetimes, the soul dances with both extremes. Sometimes you are given command, the capacity to shape worlds with your choices. Other times, you are placed at the mercy of forces beyond your control. Each side reflects the other, revealing the temptations of pride and the hidden strength in humility. The Matrix uses this dance to strip away illusions of control, teaching that true power lies not in domination, but in alignment with the deeper currents of existence. To reincarnate is to play both sides of the mirror until you see the reflection for what it is. Interconnection is another theme pulsing through the cycle. The soul does not reincarnate in isolation, but within a web of other souls bound by shared lessons. The people you meet, lovers, adversaries, family, strangers, are rarely random. They are companions from the great river of consciousness, appearing and reappearing in different roles, helping to draw out the hidden dimensions of your growth. Sometimes the soul returns not because of its own unfinished resonance, but because of bonds it has woven with others. The Matrix ensures that no lesson is learned in isolation. Love, forgiveness, betrayal, and reconciliation all require mirrors, and those mirrors often come in familiar forms across centuries. There is also the theme of mastery and surrender. Each lifetime presents a curriculum of experiences that tempt the soul to cling, to resist, to control. Yet the deeper lesson is often to let go, to recognize that the self is not the accumulation of possessions, identities, or even stories, but the awareness that witnesses them all. Reincarnation repeats until the soul learns the art of surrender, not as defeat, but as the highest form of wisdom. For in surrender, the illusion of separation dissolves, and the soul remembers its true home beyond the Matrix. The Matrix then can be seen as a vast school, but unlike the schools of this world, its classrooms are disguised as heartbreak, triumph, poverty, wealth, illness, joy, despair. The lessons are hidden in plain sight, woven into the ordinary fabric of life. Every challenge, every longing, every fleeting moment of beauty is part of the curriculum. To reincarnate is to enroll again, to sit once more before the silent teacher who never raises their voice, but who patiently repeats the lesson until it is finally understood. And yet beneath all these themes lies a subtler concept. The soul reincarnates not merely to learn, but to remember. Learning implies adding something new, but remembering is the act of uncovering what was always there. The Matrix hides your eternal nature beneath layers of form, and through the cycles of life and death, the soul begins to peel those layers away. Each lifetime is like waking from one dream only to enter another, until finally you awaken not within the dream, but from it altogether. That awakening is the end of reincarnation, the liberation from the Matrix, the return to the source from which all journeys began. Thus, the core themes guiding this mystery, unfinished resonance, repetition of patterns, illusion and awakening, power and powerlessness, interconnection, mastery and surrender, and the ultimate call to remembrance, are not separate ideas, but threads of one tapestry. Together they explain not just why the soul returns, but why the soul must return until it has gathered enough fragments of itself to step beyond the cycle. The reincarnating soul is not lost, it is journeying. The Matrix is not punishment, it is the arena of becoming. And so we find ourselves at the threshold of a deeper exploration, where these themes unfold not merely as concepts, but as living symbols, archetypal stories that echo across myth and history, whispering truths in the language of metaphor. To understand why your soul keeps reincarnating, we must look not only at the patterns but at the stories that illuminate them, the symbolic narratives that bridge the eternal with the temporal, the dream with the dreamer. To grasp the truth of reincarnation, the soul often turns not to philosophy alone but to stories. Stories have always been the secret carriers of cosmic lore, wrapping profound mysteries in the garments of myth, parable, and allegory. They speak in symbols, because symbols reach the deeper strata of the psyche, the level where words fracture, but images endure. If the previous section revealed the themes of reincarnation as principles, this section paints them as living, breathing tales, mirrors of the journey your soul has taken across lifetimes within the Matrix. Consider first the ancient image of the wheel. It appears in Hindu and Buddhist traditions as the wheel of samsara, in the West as fortune's wheel, and in countless cultures as the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Picture it, a vast, turning wheel upon which countless beings are carried, rising into joy, descending into suffering, yet never escaping its rim. At the hub, however, lies stillness, the unchanging center, untouched by the turning. This wheel is the most primal symbol of reincarnation, reminding us that life is not linear but cyclical, that we circle through roles and experiences like seasons repeating themselves. To ride the wheel without awareness is to remain captive to its motion. To find the center is to step beyond it. The wheel whispers that your soul reincarnates because it has not yet reached the still point, the center that reveals freedom. Another story comes from the imagery of the labyrinth. In many traditions, the labyrinth is not a trap but a sacred path, designed to lead the walker inward toward the heart. Imagine a vast maze constructed of mirrors, each corridor reflecting back distorted images of who you think you are. The soul enters this labyrinth with the promise that at its center lies remembrance of its true nature. Yet each twist and turn presents illusions, attachments, fears, identities that seem real enough to distract you for an entire lifetime. To reincarnate is to enter the labyrinth again, armed with a little more memory of the path, a little more wisdom about which turns are false. Each life is another step inward, another chance to reach the center where illusion dissolves. Then there is the archetype of the actor upon the stage. The philosopher Plotinus described the soul as a performer descending into the theater of time, donning a new costume for each performance. In one act, you may play the noble king, in another, the beggar in rags. The audience, fellow souls, do not always recognize you beneath your costume, yet the essence beneath the mask never changes. When the curtain falls, the actor steps backstage, only to emerge again in a new disguise. This story tells us that reincarnation is not just about learning, it is about experiencing the full range of existence, every role, every mask, until the actor finally realizes that they are not the character, nor even the play itself, but the timeless witness who chose to perform. A more haunting symbol comes from the myth of the river of forgetfulness. In Greek mythology, souls entering the world of the living were said to drink from the waters of Lethe, which erased memory of past lives. This forgetting is central to the mystery of reincarnation. If the soul remembered every lifetime in sharp detail, the illusion of separateness would collapse too quickly, and the lessons would lose their edge. Forgetfulness, though it feels like exile, is the condition of true growth. Each return to the matrix is a plunge into Lethe's waters, a surrender of memory so that the soul can encounter life with fresh innocence and wrestle with its illusions anew. But the river also teaches that remembrance is the key. Snippets of déjà vu, flashes of recognition, inexplicable affinities, all hint that the soul is not as forgetful as it seems. Another symbolic tale is that of the cosmic mirror. Imagine standing before a mirror that reflects not your physical body, but your entire soul. In its depths, you see the accumulated desires, fears, shadows, and virtues of countless lives. To look at such a mirror would be overwhelming, and so the matrix, in its strange mercy, breaks the reflection into fragments, one lifetime at a time. Each incarnation is a shard of the mirror, showing only a piece of the whole, a manageable reflection to wrestle with. But eventually, as lifetimes accumulate, the shards begin to reassemble, and the soul sees its full image for the first time. Until then, the reincarnating cycle is the slow recollection of the broken mirror, a gradual acceptance of the self in its totality. One final story, told in many traditions, is that of the sleeping god. The soul is likened to a divine being who has fallen into slumber, dreaming itself into countless forms. The world is that dream, the matrix the stage upon which the dream unfolds. Each reincarnation is another dream within the dream, another chapter in the god's exploration of itself. Liberation comes when the god begins to awaken, realizing it was never the dream character at all, but the dreamer. This myth reveals reincarnation not as exile but as play, the divine play of consciousness exploring its own infinite depths. To awaken within the dream is to taste freedom even while still embodied. These symbolic narratives are not idle fictions. They live within you, surfacing in your imagination, your dreams, your moments of inexplicable knowing. You have felt the wheel when life seems to repeat its lessons endlessly. You have walked the labyrinth when you found yourself circling through the same struggles with new faces. You have worn the actor's mask when you reinvented yourself, only to feel the same soul shining beneath. You have drunk from Lethe when you forgot what you once knew, and glimpsed the cosmic mirror when life revealed a truth about you too vast to explain. You are the sleeping god, awakening slowly, lifetime after lifetime, until you remember the dream was always your own creation. The power of these narratives lies in their ability to collapse distance. They remind you that reincarnation is not an abstract doctrine, but a living experience, shaping your daily life, whether you believe in it or not. They help you see that the dramas you enact, the wounds you repeat, the loves you cannot explain are all part of a grand, symbolic story your soul has been telling across centuries. And within that story lies the possibility of transformation, not by escaping the narrative, but by recognizing yourself as its author. With these symbolic lenses in place, the question now becomes, how do these truths, hidden in myths and metaphors, translate into the immediacy of daily life? How can the awareness of reincarnation reshape the way you move through the matrix, not just as a dreamer, but as one who begins to awaken within the dream? To speak of reincarnation, the wheel of samsara, the labyrinth of illusions, and the dream of the sleeping god can feel lofty, distant, and ethereal. But the true measure of wisdom is not how it stirs the imagination, but how it roots itself into the living soil of everyday existence. If the soul reincarnates into this matrix, not to punish or reward, but to learn, remember, and awaken, then the question is no longer abstract. How do you live differently once you realize this? How do these cosmic truths ripple into the practical, ordinary rhythms of your day, the choices you make, the way you love, the way you endure suffering, the way you seek freedom? The first implication is the reorientation of suffering. Normally, pain is seen as an intruder, a meaningless obstacle to be avoided or suppressed. But when you recognize yourself as a soul weaving through lifetimes, suffering becomes the sharp edge of the teacher's pen, carving lessons into the fabric of your being. Every challenge, whether betrayal, loss, failure, or fear, becomes less about punishment and more about revelation. Instead of asking, "Why me?" the awakened question becomes, "What is this showing me? What unfinished resonance is seeking resolution here?" This shift is subtle but revolutionary. It transforms life from a battlefield of unfair blows into a classroom of hidden wisdom. Second, reincarnation invites you to loosen the grip of fear. If you are more than this body, if your consciousness will endure beyond this chapter, then death loses some of its terror. You begin to see it not as annihilation, but as transition, a doorway into another cycle of the dream. This does not make loss painless, but it softens the edges of despair with perspective. When loved ones depart, when illness strikes, when mortality whispers in your ear, you can meet it with a steadier gaze, knowing the soul is not extinguished but transformed. This shift can infuse life with a deeper courage, a willingness to risk, to love fully, to live authentically, because you recognize that nothing essential is ever truly lost. Reincarnation also redefines relationships. That stranger who feels oddly familiar, that lover whose presence stirs you as though across centuries, that adversary whose conflict feels strangely destined. These encounters are rarely random. When you embrace the idea of soul contracts, the bonds carried across lives, you begin to honor relationships with greater reverence. You may forgive more readily, recognizing that the drama between you may be a continuation of lessons carried forward. You may also set boundaries with clarity, realizing that not all connections are meant to remain, but all carry meaning. Love and conflict alike are woven into the curriculum, shaping your growth and the growth of those around you. To live with this awareness is to walk through life as if every face you meet may be a mirror, showing you some forgotten aspect of yourself. On a practical level, reincarnation calls you into responsibility. If you carry unresolved patterns into future lifetimes, then the choices you make now echo far beyond the span of years you currently inhabit. This awareness can ignite a deeper urgency, not the frantic urgency of fear, but the calm urgency of purpose. You begin to ask yourself, what seeds am I planting now? What echoes am I creating that will ripple not only through this life, but into the next? Such a perspective does not paralyze but liberates, turning even small actions into sacred gestures. The kindness you offer, the bitterness you release, the courage you embody, these are not fleeting but enduring, woven into the fabric of your soul's journey. The Matrix, as an environment of lessons, also reveals its traps more clearly once you understand it. The endless chase for possessions, status, or fleeting pleasures becomes easier to see for what it is. Not evil, but distraction. The soul reincarnates in part because it is seduced by these illusions, forgetting that fulfillment does not lie in accumulation, but in remembrance of essence. By practicing presence, mindfulness, simplicity, and compassion, you begin to loosen the Matrix's hold. You participate in its dream without becoming enslaved by it, like a lucid dreamer who recognizes that the monsters of the dream are reflections, not enemies. Another real-world implication is humility. Reincarnation shows you that your current identity, your successes, your failures, your privileges, your struggles, are temporary roles. They are not the sum of who you are, but chapters in a much larger story. This realization dissolves arrogance and self-pity alike. If in this life you stand in power, you recognize that in another, you may have stood in weakness. If you suffer now, you realize you have also known joy and may know it again. This perspective softens judgment for yourself and for others, reminding you that no one is defined by the snapshot of a single life. Everyone is a soul in motion, learning at their own pace, stumbling and rising in the great dance of becoming. Perhaps the most empowering integration of reincarnation is the possibility of awakening within the cycle itself. You need not wait for the wheel to stop turning to taste liberation. With awareness, you can live as though you are remembering, even while still forgetting. You can approach each challenge as a fragment of a larger lesson, each relationship as a continuation of an eternal bond, each day as an opportunity to align more deeply with the essence of who you are. This does not remove you from the Matrix, but it transforms your participation in it. You shift from being a passive player, tossed about by unseen currents, to a conscious dreamer, shaping your path with intention. And yet, even as you integrate these truths into daily life, there remains a question. What is the ultimate purpose of this cycle? If every lesson is learned, every mask removed, every illusion dissolved, what awaits the soul? Does it merge back into the source, like a drop returning to the ocean? Does it choose to return, not out of compulsion, but out of compassion, to help others awaken within the dream? Or does it transcend the Matrix entirely, stepping into realms our words can only gesture toward? The practical insights bring us closer to the edge of mystery, but they also prepare us for the final step, the transformation of perspective that unifies all these themes into one call to awakening. For reincarnation is not merely something to understand, it is something to respond to. Once you see the pattern, once you glimpse the architecture of the Matrix, the question becomes not just why you return, but what you will do with the knowledge that you are more than a body moving through time. You are a soul remembering itself across eternity. We have walked together through the mystery of reincarnation, beginning with the aching question of why the soul keeps returning to this Matrix, moving through its themes, its symbols, and its living implications. What remains now is not just explanation, but transformation. For to truly understand why your soul reincarnates is to stand at a crossroads. One path leads back into forgetfulness, into the comfortable distractions of the dream. The other leads into awakening, into a conscious embrace of your eternal nature. The choice is not abstract, it is unfolding in you even now. The Matrix is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a teacher to be recognized. It is the dream woven by the soul itself, an intricate design meant to stretch your awareness until it breaks beyond its own boundaries. To reincarnate is to agree to keep walking the labyrinth until you finally see the walls are made of your own forgetting. Every lifetime is another spiral, another turning of the wheel, another rehearsal on the stage of existence. But hidden within this endless cycle is a seed of liberation, waiting for you to claim it. Not in some distant afterlife, but here, in the breath you are taking now. Why does your soul keep reincarnating? Because there are still lessons unlearned, still mirrors unrecognized, still fragments of yourself waiting to be remembered. Because love, in its infinite patience, calls you back again and again, offering chance after chance to grow, to forgive, to awaken. Because you have not yet reached the center of the wheel, the still point, where illusion collapses and truth shines unbroken. And yet, the very recognition of this cycle is the beginning of freedom. Awareness is the first crack in the dream, the first glimpse that the stage is a stage, that the masks are masks, that the river of forgetfulness cannot erase what is eternal within you. Now you must ask yourself, how will you live differently with this knowledge? Will you continue as though life were random, as though suffering were meaningless, as though relationships were accidents? Or will you live as one who remembers even faintly that every moment is a fragment of a larger journey? To live in remembrance is to treat your choices as sacred, your relationships as mirrors, your struggles as teachers, and your joys as glimpses of eternity. It is to participate in the matrix without being enslaved by it, to dance in the dream while awakening to the dreamer. This is the call of transformation, to become lucid within the cycle of reincarnation, not to escape prematurely, not to reject the world as illusion, but to embrace it as the very crucible of your awakening. Liberation is not a distant prize waiting at the end of countless lifetimes. It is a posture of being available to you now. It is found in the way you breathe into presence, the way you forgive when it would be easier to hate, the way you release when it would be easier to cling, the way you love without condition even in a world built on conditions. Each act of remembrance loosens the wheel's grip. Each choice made in awareness thins the veil of the matrix. And so the conclusion is not an ending but a beginning. You will continue to reincarnate as long as you choose forgetfulness, but you are free to awaken at any moment. The matrix has always been both the trap and the key, both the dream and the doorway out of it. The choice before you is not whether you will return, for in some form you already are returning, but whether you will awaken within the return. Take this as your invitation, your call to action. Live as though your soul is eternal because it is. Live as though your relationships are woven across lifetimes, because they are. Live as though your choices echo beyond this single span of years, because they do. And most of all, live as though you are remembering what you have always been, because remembrance is the beginning of freedom. The wheel may continue to turn, but you need not be crushed beneath it. You can find the center, the still point, the lucid gaze that sees the dream for what it is. And from that place, reincarnation becomes not a burden, but a choice. The soul no longer returns because it must, but because it loves. It reincarnates not to be trapped, but to serve, to create, to awaken others as it has awakened. This is the highest calling, not merely to escape the matrix, but to shine within it until the dream itself begins to glow with truth. You are that dreamer. You are that eternal spark, wearing 1,000 faces across centuries, learning, remembering, awakening. And even now, as you read these words, you are closer than ever to remembering that you were never just the character. You were always the author, always the witness, always the one beyond the wheel. So let this be your turning point. Live with remembrance, love with awareness. Walk the labyrinth not as a prisoner, but as a pilgrim who knows that at the center lies home. The soul keeps reincarnating until it remembers that it no longer needs to. The moment you recognize that truth, the cycle itself begins to shift. You are no longer a captive of the matrix. You are its master, its lucid dreamer, its awakened heart. The choice is yours, and the time, as always, is now.